Welcome back to the Classical Music Podcast. I'm Brigitte Bazat, and today I'm running the show alone because I felt like this particular topic needed a somewhat personal touch. And this topic today is how to stay motivated as a musician during this pandemic. Now, of course, it's been a difficult year for everyone, but of course, especially for the musicians. We all know this, it's no news anymore. We are nearly at the end of the year, and hopefully things will start looking up soon. But doesn't look like it just yet. Yeah, so I wanted to share my kind of personal experience this year. Not that I am by any means an expert in staying motivated, and I also don't believe that one can stay motivated 100% of the time. It's impossible, I think. But I did discover a few ways that have helped me throughout this year. So I hope you can find some help in this as well. So I guess the first thing to talk about would be my life before COVID hit. Now, it was very, very hectic and crazy busy. So in 2019, I completed my master's degree. Not long after that, I was very fortunate enough to have the opportunity to work with Classical Music Bonn, which is an orchestra based in Bonn/Cologne. So it's a touring orchestra. We traveled all around Germany and played in the biggest cities and some of the best concert halls in the country. So that was a really cool experience, but I was basically on the road 24/7, at least it felt like. We would have 7 to 10 concerts per month, but they could be all together or spread out. It was different every tour. And that meant that, especially when it would be spread out, I had to travel to every country, to every different city by myself, usually because I do not live in Cologne. So firstly, I would have to travel to Cologne for rehearsals for a couple of days, and then the tour would start, and then I would be in and out of Hanover and trains and buses and concerts all the time. That was the lifestyle that I had, and sometimes I would be taking the train home at 2 in the morning and not arriving here until 7 in the morning. So there was really not a lot of sleep going on and not a lot of time for myself. I was basically living in automatic mode constantly. And at the time it felt great because I was very happy to be working, and once that stopped, that was a huge shock, of course, as it was for everyone. I remember once COVID hit, I could not remember at the time the last time I spent a week in my home. That it felt crazy to me at the time. Now I don't remember when I left my home, basically. But yeah, that I mean, it had an impact on everyone, of course, and also me. And my biggest realization was how much time I had to myself and how much silence there was around also, and not knowing what was going to happen next. So there was also fear and anxiety and worry. But during this time, I learned so much about myself. I didn't realize up to that point that I was living on automatic mode. It was only because I had that chance to pause and think for a second that I realized that this lifestyle, I was going to burn out at some point because I just was not stopping. And I'm sure I was not the only one in that situation. And that's also why I wanted to share this episode today, because I can't believe how actually I feel very blessed to have been given this extra time this year to really reevaluate my life and hopefully make it better and keep it going in a better direction. And on that note, I really took the time to think about my life, and I realized that I did not want to go back to the lifestyle that I had before COVID hit. And that was hugely impactful on me and the way that I started to kind of live after that point. And that really helped with my motivation because, of course, I mean, when COVID hit, everybody was quite down and scared. So, and I was not any exception, but thinking about it in this way, knowing that, okay, something has happened in the world, something out of my control, but I don't want to be like I was before, so why not try now every day to see how I want to live my life? Because I still didn't know, and I still don't really know now. I'm still learning. But that has been kind of my biggest push in terms of motivation for this year, is that, okay, I'm using this time now to figure out what direction I want to go in. Because I'm young, I mean, I'm 24, nearly 25 years old, and I don't think many people have their life figured out by this age, but it's really, I feel very, very lucky to have this time right now to at least realize that I can figure it out, or at least try different things to see what works best for me, I guess. Yeah, so the first thing I did was work on my physical and mental health, and I have talked a lot before about working on mental health in the past, and this is still a journey that I'm going on every day. Just because I have my ways of figuring out how to deal with my emotions or my body or whatever is going on doesn't mean that it's going to be perfect all the time. There are still many mornings I wake up feeling incredibly unmotivated, seeing the gray sky outside and thinking, oh, another sunny-less day in Hanover, Germany. But, you know, what also keeps me going, I can't remember what book it was in. Started to read quite a few books in the beginning of COVID. I don't think I finished one, but I started many. But I heard or read somewhere that it starts with 1%. If you can improve by 1% in something every day, you're already so much more ahead if you do nothing. And that was very impactful for me. And of course it seems simple, but I mean, it's really hard sometimes when you're really not feeling like you can do anything and you just want to stay in bed all day. It can be really hard to do that 1%. But knowing that you only need to do 1% to improve for the next day makes it so much easier than being 100% better. And that really put things into perspective for me. I thought, okay, well, if I can do 1%, I'm doing the bare minimum. But at least I've done something. And normally then if I do 1%, then I'm like, well, why not 2% or more? You know, it's then it can go up and down, and sometimes I would go even crazy, like how much can I do in one day? But this is, you know, just life. That's what I mean is, you know, some days it's 100% motivation, let's see how much you can do. Other days you're just like, well, I think I can only manage 1% today. And that's okay. And realizing that and not putting so much pressure on myself really kind of lifted this weight of like, okay, motivation doesn't have to be such a big deal all the time. Take the things that you want to prioritize and treat them like the things that you do anyway every day, like drinking water or brushing your teeth or having breakfast or drinking coffee or whatever it is. You know, trying to treat these daily tasks not as like a to-do list, but more, this is something that's part of my life and I'm just going to do it every day. Sometimes a bit more, sometimes a bit less, maybe some days without, but prioritizing it and making it not a chore, but something that is just a part of your everyday life. And this is a tricky thing to do. I tried so many different things throughout this year. I tried to set myself these crazy schedules and wake up at 7 in the morning and start with meditation and then yoga and have this whole routine and week planned out. I couldn't even last one day because for me, I find it difficult, for example, to wake up super early if I don't really have a reason to. I am much more of a night owl, whatever you call it. I'm always much more motivated and awake at night. It's always been that way. Although I can wake up early when I need to, when I'm working, it's not a problem. But if I know that I have the whole day and the evening to do whatever I need to do, I find it very difficult to wake up early. And so then this whole routine that I had prepared, of course, was going to fail because I was setting myself up for something that my body doesn't tend to respond well to. Let's put it this way. So it was also like this balance of, okay, I tried this out, didn't work, and I tried not to let myself get too down about that because, of course, this morning routine and having everything kind of perfectly planned out, I would love to be that kind of person. And I've tried it so many times. Sometimes it works, maybe for a brief period of time, but most of the time it doesn't stick. And that's because for me and my lifestyle and the way that my body and my mind works, it's just not like that. It might be occasionally, but not all the time. So I really had to kind of say to myself, okay, it's okay. You don't have to be like this because that's what somebody's picture of what being productive and motivated looks like. But I think motivation and productivity can be seen in so many different ways, and I think it's a very personal thing also. For example, for me, being productive means that I have energy to do all the little things throughout the day. That's what it means for me right now. Maybe it means something different in the future. It definitely meant something different in the past. But right now, for me, being productive means that I have done my yoga for the day because it makes me feel good and I enjoy it. And then I have energy to do the other things that I need to do that day, which could be even, small things. Now that I'm spending so much in my apartment, there is a lot to do in my apartment all the time. Like cleaning, like washing, like whatever it is. There are still things that you kind of need motivation to do. And for me, that if I get that done, I'm super happy because that's, it's really, I try to find the kind of celebrating the small things because they're still important, and that at least helps you feel like you're doing something, especially in a time where we literally can't do anything. So that has been kind of the basic way that I've been kind of trying to deal with it so far. And like I said, it's not perfect every day, and I'm not an expert. It's just the way that I've been figuring it out myself and trying different ways. I also, at one point, I tried to go running every day, or not every day, every second day. And I thought, I did it for, I think, 5 days, like every second day. So maybe about a week or a week and a half, I was running consistently. And I have never been a runner. And I just started accidentally, randomly. And after a few days, I thought, well, this is fantastic. I love this feeling. I want to do this every day. I'm going to be a runner now. So I decided, and I was like, okay, in my calendar, I'm going to write every second day. Without a doubt, I have to just go, get out there and do it. And I'm sure if I had done that, I would have felt great. But after that happened, I then actually, thankfully, I had a concert. So that was slightly interrupted for a few days, but I could not go back. And in the beginning, I really bet myself up about it because I thought, oh, you failed at a routine yet again. And you felt so good when you were doing it. Why would you stop? And then I realized, okay, this was a great experiment for me. I do enjoy it. At least I know that if I want to go for a run now, I can. And it's not this big deal as it was previously. But that's not really my priority in life. It's not my priority in life to be a runner and to do that every second day. I maybe it would work out now as we have the time, but as soon as concerts do start happening again, that's gonna go out the window. I'm sure of it. I know myself. It's not gonna stick, and it hasn't, obviously. So it's really just about, at least for me, motivation is figuring out what the priorities. So why do I want to be motivated to practice? For me personally, it's because I want to be a better violinist. Well, it's even more than that. My motivation to practice is more about discovering my instrument than it is trying to be better all the time. Because there are some days when I practice and maybe I'm only 0.5% better than the day before. But when I'm practicing, and that motivation I find really helps when I'm trying to discover my instrument and myself within the instrument. So because there are no concerts and there's not so much coming up, I mean, now I have a few goals in mind, but before, I mean, it was really, really hard. I have to say, I was motivated in many other things in my life, but practice for a long time this year was quite on the lower ranking of priorities because there was nothing to practice for. And I mean, this is it's incredibly hard to get out of this kind of rut, I would say. And for me, very much, it's always a challenge, always has been, probably always will be, when there's nothing specific. And I'm also the kind of person that I need a time frame. I need that kind of last minute pressure. Like, oh, you have a week until this. Like, okay, last minute cramming. That's my favorite thing to do. I don't know why. I've always been like that. For example, this episode is being filmed the night before. I can only seem to do things right before I have to. And without that kind of pressure during this year, it has been a difficult task to try and practice, because for what? And then I had to think about, okay, why am I practicing? Why, especially when there's no concerts, it's like, what are we doing with our lives now? Are they going to be concerts in the future? What is the future for classical music? I mean, all these thoughts that obviously affects your practice and your motivation to practice. And it's not an easy task to fight with that. But some ways that I found really help is just trying to rediscover my instrument and myself within the instrument, and just discover my own voice within my instrument, and just using that as the reason why I'm practicing has really helped me to start enjoying playing the violin again, and really working on it and practicing and figuring out things, especially by myself, because I am the only feedback that I get, or with video recording, and realizing that now I have actually the time to figure out what kind of colors and sounds that I can create. What do I like? What is my voice on the instrument? And I have the time now to kind of figure that out, and I think that's kind of incredible. And looking at it in this way definitely helps with the motivation. I mean, of course, not every day, but if I try to keep this in my mind, like, I want to be better at my violin for me. I want to find my voice, because ultimately when I'm performing, I'm anyway trying to portray my story and my voice through the composer's eyes, and that's ultimately what I want, at least personally. When I'm performing, I want to share my story and my voice, and what better way than to practice figuring out what my voice is. As I said earlier, I am only 24, and I'm still figuring out what I want to do in this world and with my life, and that's what I'm doing now with my violin. And I'm trying to always kind of to combine what I'm going through in my life into my music, because that, well, for me, that just makes sense, and that's, I think, a normal thing to do. Yeah, just finding a way to blend what is going on in my life into my music, so that I can speak through my violin a lot better. That really is my biggest motivation when it comes to practice. Finding my own voice, not only in my life but also in my violin playing. And if that's not a good motivation, I don't know what else is. Another huge part of motivation for me is, in fact, this podcast, because I feel like putting this pressure on myself to put out an episode every week is indeed a lot of pressure, but it helps me to keep moving forward and to keep thinking, okay, what's next? What is next? What do we need to talk about? What do we need to do to continue as classical musicians? I mean, our community is kind of falling apart right now. It has been kind of for a long time, even before COVID hit. And now, obviously, we all know it's much worse. So this podcast gives me motivation, because I have to be here every week. I have to be ready and prepared and to share something, because I want to. Because I want to share things and conversations and topics that hopefully can bring us all together and help each other out a bit more, and so that we don't feel so alone. I think to conclude this episode, I want to say that I think we as musicians have now a big responsibility. I believe we've been given an opportunity this year, an opportunity to reevaluate the way not only we are living our lives, but the way the classical world is running at the moment, because it has anyway been not looking good for quite some time now. And I think now is the perfect opportunity to discover what we can do better. Not only to reignite, the passion for classical music, but also to give the classical musicians a better life somehow, because the way it is now and the way it has been, in my opinion, is just not okay. It's time to look at the bigger picture. It's time to remember that music is about sharing and community and about beauty, and it doesn't have to be so complicated. And at the end of the day, we want to share our voices. We want to come together and celebrate the amazing composers that have provided us with all this amazing content that we get to play every day and listen to. We as classical musicians, yes. And I think we need to remind the world why it's still relevant, which is a difficult task, and it's something we've been trying to do for a long time, I understand, but I think classical music is still as relevant as Shakespeare is. It's still a part of our history that we must respect, and it's a beautiful part of our history, and it's an intelligent part of our history. It's incredible. I mean, the stories we hear from composers and musicians, these people are heroes, and they should be celebrated. And I want to leave you with this message that your motivation should come from those that gave us this art in the first place. Your motivation should be Beethoven composing while deaf. Your motivation should be Shostakovich composing during the reign of Stalin. I mean, if that is not enough motivation to fight for what we love, then I don't know what is. So after listening to my little rant, I hope you can find your own motivation and find your own purpose and find your passion, and then the motivation will come, I think. And yeah, if you have any other ideas, please write a comment down below and share them if you have some good tips on motivation. And please go ahead and like and subscribe and share with your friends. And I will see you next week.